We continue now at the top of Daf Tesvav Amid in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 15b. On the previous summit, the Gemara asked a question from a Braisa on Shmuel. Shmuel said that a creditor, a Baal Chov, is able to collect from the Chasim Meshubadim, including the Shevach, including the improvement of the land. And the problem is that the Braisa says that the Baal Chov can collect the Shevach, but he does at least have to pay something. Something he'll have to pay for the Yitzia, whatever the expenses are. And so the Gemara answers it's not difficult. Here we're talking about Shevach Hamagia L'chseifayim. We're talking about Shevach that reaches the shoulders. Rashi says Hamagia L'chseifayim means Karov Li Kotzer, meaning if it's Shevach that is close to being harvested, Ela Shadayin Srichan L'karka, but it still requires the earth, Havelu Keperes Gemurin, so that's already considered to be like full-fledged produce. The Ein Baal Chov Gova also below Yitzia. So that kind of Shevach, the creditor cannot collect unless he pays the expenses. And Kan B'Shevach She'ino Magia L'chseifayim, if you're talking about Shevach that's not Magia L'chseifayim, that the creditor can collect, and he doesn't have to pay anything. But the Gemara says, it's not true. Shmuel all the time would collect from the Shevach, even the Shevach, and the Gemara says to that, Lokash, it's not difficult. It depends how much was owed. In one case, we're talking about where the amount of money that was owed to the creditor was the value of the land and the improvement. And but in the other case, we're talking about where he's only owed the value of the land itself. The Yoav le Shivchi Umaslikle, in that situation, he gives the value of the improvement and he removes him. And Rashi explains, many cases like this would come before Shmuel. And Shmuel would say he can collect all the improvement with the land, even if it was Shevach, as long as the produce still needed the earth. Shmuel said that the creditor is allowed to take even the Shevach. And Rashi continues, that brisa which says that the buyer can take the expenses from the Baal Chov, that's a case where the Baal Chov is not owed by the mocher the value of the land and the improvement. So therefore the creditor has to pay the lokeach for what he spent on the improvement, and then he can remove him from any claims against him. And Rashi continues and notes, the reason why the brisa phrases it in terms of the expenses, and it doesn't simply say notel keneged hachov mi balakarka, that he takes corresponding to the debt from the owner of the land, v'hamosr mi balchov, and everything else he takes from the creditor. Meaning to say, we're talking about the reimbursement for the lokeach. The lokeach bought this land, and then the creditor takes away this land because the creditor was owed money by the seller, and so the lokeach now has to get reimbursed. So for the land itself, he's obviously going to get reimbursed from the person who sold him the land. That's the person who owed the money to the creditor. But then for all the improvements, he's getting reimbursed from the creditor because the creditor wasn't even owed that amount of money. That was beyond the amount the creditor was owed. So that's what it should have simply said. Why does it bring in the issue of whether the enhancements are worth more than what was spent or they're less than what was spent? And so Rashi says to that, Lashmin and Higufa, that is to teach us that Chiddush itself. Lashmin and Higufa asa, Tehecha diyatzia yasera lashevach. It's saying, let's say the lokeach improved the land, but he actually spent more money than the value that the land went up, so he doesn't get full reimbursement. Ein lo ela yitzia shir shevach. He's only going to be reimbursed for what he spent up to the amount that it actually enhanced the land. He's not going to get back all of his expenses in that situation. That's what the Bryce is teaching us. But the Gemara continues, This works out according to the one who says that let's say the lokeach has money and he doesn't want to give up the land to the creditor. He'd rather just pay off the creditor. But one mandamer says he can't give money to the creditor. He has to give the land. So then this all works out well, because then in such a situation, he can't pay off the creditor. He's essentially forced to give up the land, and then he'll get a certain amount of reimbursement. But according to the one who says that let's say the lokeach has money, so he's able to actually use that money to get the Baal Chov, to get the creditor off his back. So then the lokeach should be able to say as follows. He should be able to say to him, Ilu haveli zuze, if I had money, have a masal kinoch mikula ara, I'd be able to remove you from this entire land. I'd be able to pay off the debt and get you off this property completely. So hashta de lesli zuze, so now that I don't have money, so havli garva da'ara bi'ara shir shivcha, you should at least give me a portion of the land according to the amount that it's improved. I should be able to retain some of the land. And the Gemara says to that, Hachab Mayaskin, and here what are we talking about? Kagon Shaso Apotiki. It wasn't simply that this is Nechasim Meshubadim. It's not simply a lien on the property, but it was actually an Apotiki, which essentially means he designated this land. The person who owed the money designated this land as what would be used to pay off the debt. To Yamarle, he said to him, Lo Yehelach Piron Elamizu, you're going to get payment specifically from this. So in that situation, even if the Lokeach has money, he's not able to get the creditor away from the land. The creditor is allowed to collect the land. And Rashi explains, Hanichalaman de Amar Plugsi Bechsubis, this is a machlokas in Meseches Ksubis, whether the Lokeach can get the creditor off his back with money. Let's say the Lokeach has money to pay off the debt. Lo Motzi Mesalik Le Balchov, he's not able to remove the creditor min ara de Balchov Kadim. He's not able to remove the creditor from the land because the Balchov takes precedence. So Shaper, then it works out well. The Motzi Lemeimar, the Hecha Diesh Karka Mosra Lachov, because then we could say, let's say the land is worth more than the debt. Im Hashavach, together with the improvements, the land is worth more. Mesalik Leila Lokeach Bezuze Al Karcho, so then he's able to remove the Lokeach with money against his will. Al Karcho de Lokeach, against the will of the Lokeach, meaning the creditor can come along, take the land, and tell the Lokeach, here, take a little bit of the money for the improvements, and I'm going to get all the land. V'lo Motzi Amar Lokeach, and the Lokeach can't say to him, Havli min ara, give me from the land, Shir Shivchi, the amount that I improved it, Damar Kule Didi, because he says it's all mine, Viat Yarat Bush, Shlo Brishus, and you essentially went there, Shlo Brishus, that all makes sense. But again, according to the Amanda Amr, who says that the Lokeach is able to give money to the creditor and pay him off, so then again, why can't the Lokeach at least demand some of the land according to the value of the improvement? And the Gemara answers to that, the Shavya Nihile Lova Lebalchov Apotiki. The case over here is that the Lova designates this land as an Apotiki, Lahara, this land is Apotiki, V'hakol Modim Bezu, and everybody admits in such a situation, that even if the Lokeach has money, Lo Havim Motzi Mesalik Le, he's not able to remove the creditor. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Hikar Ba She'ena Shalo, let's say the buyer recognizes, he realizes that what the seller is selling to him, the land that the seller is selling is not actually the seller's is actually a thief, and the buyer is aware of that, V'locha, but he buys it anyway, and then it gets taken away, it gets repossessed by the person who really owns the land. So the question is the buyer able to get reimbursed from the seller in this situation? Amar Rav says, Mos Yeshlo, he can get his money back, but Shevach Einlo, but he's not able to get back his improvement in this case. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, Afilu Mos Einlo, he can't even get his money back in this situation. The Gemara says, B'maika Miflagi, what are they arguing about? Rav Savar Adam Yodea Shakarka Einlo. Rav says that the person realizes that he has no land. V'gamar v'nasan l'shem pikaron, and therefore what he's doing really is he's giving it as a deposit. He realizes that he's not buying any land because he realizes the person he's buying from doesn't really own the land. And what he's actually doing is he's giving the money as a deposit. He expects to get the money back, and that's why according to Rav, he is able to get the money back. The Gemara says, "V'neimale l'shem pikadon." Well, why doesn't he just say, "I'm giving you this money as a pikadon"? Why go through all of this of pretending to buy property that he knows the seller does not own? And the answer to that is Savar lo makava, because he thinks the person is not going to accept the deposit, and therefore, in order to get him to accept the deposit, he does this as if he's purchasing the land. Ushmuel Savar, and Shmuel holds Adam Yodea Shakarka Einlo. The person knows that the person has no land. V'gamar v'nasan l'shem atana. What he's actually doing is he's giving a gift, so he can't later say he wants the money back. The Gemara says, "V'neimale l'shem atana." So why doesn't he just tell him, "I'm giving you this money as a gift"? And the Gemara says to that, "Ksifa le'mil," so that already would be embarrassing for him to give it as a gift. The person wouldn't want to receive a gift, and so therefore he does it in this fashion. And the Gemara continues, "V'pligi bechadazimna." But Rav and Shmuel, they argue about this exact same thing a different time. They've already argued about this in a different context. The Itmar, because it was stated, "Hamakadesh azachosa." Let's say a person gives kiddushin to his sister. Of course, a person is not able to marry his sister, and he gives her the money of kiddushin. Rav Amar Mos Chos, and Rav says the money goes back to him. Ushmuel Amar Mos Matan, and Shmuel says no, the money is a gift. It's like he's giving the money as a gift to his sister. And the Gemara explains, Rav Amar Rav says Mos Chos, when the money is returned. Adam Yodea Shein Kiddushin Tovsin Bachos, because a person knows the kiddushin is not really effective with his sister. The Gamar V'nasan L'Shem Pikadon, he's just giving it to her really as a deposit, and that's why he gets the money back. And the Gemara says V'neim Lo L'Shem Pikadon. Why doesn't he just tell her that he's giving it to her as a pikadon? Savar Lo Makavla Minei, because again he thinks she's not going to accept the pikadon, she doesn't want the deposit. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says most matana, that the money is considered a gift from the brother to the sister. Adam Yodea she'in kiddushin tovsin ba'achoso, because a person knows again that kiddushin is not effective with his sister. V'gamar v'nasan l'shem matana, and he's giving it really to her as a gift. And the Gemara says v'neimul lo l'shem matana. Why doesn't he just tell her that he's giving it to her as a gift? And again, the Gemara says ksifo lamils, it's embarrassing for her, and that's why he's doing it in this fashion. It seems to be the exact same machlokas. And so the Gemara therefore is asking this as a question: why do we have the same machlokas twice? And the Gemara explains stricha, it's necessary. The itmar b'ha, because if we only had in this case, meaning we had the situation of the sale, b'hakam arava de lo avdi inchi de yahavi matanos lenechra. In this case, Rav says that it's not considered a matana because it's not normal that people give matanas to a stranger. Aval gabe achosu by his sister, ema modele l'shmuel. I would say that maybe Rav admits to Shmuel that it is considered a gift to his sister. V'itmar b'hach kamar Shmuel. If I only had this case, I would say Shmuel maybe only said it by sister. Aval b'ha ema modele l'Rav. But in the other case, maybe Shmuel admits to Rav, and so the tzricha, therefore it's necessary to have the machlokas in both cases. But the Gemara continues, Bein l'Rav damar pikad, and whether we're following Rav, who says that the money is considered a deposit, Bein l'Shmuel damar matan, or whether we're following Shmuel, who says that the money is considered a gift. But highly Arab, this buyer who's buying the land, and he knows, he's aware of the fact that he's buying it from a gazlan. He knows the seller doesn't really own the land. So how is it that he's going down to the land, taking possession of the land? And how is it that he's consuming the produce from the land? Doesn't he realize he's essentially stealing the land? And the Gemara says to that, Savar, he thinks to himself, I'll go down to the land, I'll take possession of the land, v'yavin, and I'll work the land, v'echel begav, I'll eat the produce from the land, just like the seller was doing the same thing. The seller was working the land, the seller was taking the produce, I'll just act like the seller. And when the actual owner of the land comes and takes it back, so then each one says what happens to the money, various things. The money, according to Rav, who says pikadon, that money will become a pikadon. And L'Shmuel damar matana. According to Shmuel, who says the money becomes a matana, the money becomes a matana. And Rashi explains, Bein l'Rav damar v'chula, whether you're following Rav, whether you're following Shmuel, Kilomar, what the Gemara means to ask is as follows. How can we say that the reasoning of Rav is because the person, the buyer, is giving the money as a deposit? And the reasoning of Shmuel is because the person is giving the money as a gift. If that's what the buyer is thinking, if he's thinking that the money is a deposit or a gift, how did he ever go down to the land and take possession of it, to work the land and to eat the produce? It must be that he really thought that it was a good sale. He wasn't thinking it was a deposit or a gift. Otherwise, he wouldn't take possession of the property. He wasn't an expert in the halacha. Doesn't that mean that the real reason of the argument between Rav and Shmuel, there's a different explanation? And so then the Gemara explained again that he figured he's going to do the same thing as the gazlan, to have Ovid HaGazlan, exactly what the gazlan is doing, that's what I will do. And then again, when the person takes back the property, that's the machlokas Rav and Shmuel. L'Rav damar pikadon, according to Rav, who says pikadon, it's a pikadon meaning, kolomar means to say, aliba de Rav mefarshinon, dahai meimar omar, zuz nehavi pikadon. According to Rav, we explain that when the person is saying the money will become something, Rav will say that the money will become a pikadon. V'l'Shmuel mefarshinon, dahai omar, zuz nehavi matan. And according to Shmuel, we explain that which the person said, that the money should convert, that the money is converting into a matana, into a gift. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Hilchas of the halacha is, Yesh lo mos v'yesh lo shevach. Let's say you have a situation again, where the lokeach bought from the mocher, and the mocher turned out to be a gazlan, so the lokeach certainly can get back his money. Everybody agreed that he can get back the money that he paid for the field. The question was, with regards to the improvement, so the halacha is, that the person is able to get back the money, the value of the improvement he made to the field as well. V'afa pishalo pirish lo as ha-shevach. Even though that wasn't explicitly explained that he would get back the improvements, he does get back the improvements anyway. And Rashi says, Hilchasa bepluksa kamais, in our first machlokas, yesh lo mos v'yesh lo shevach. He gets his money back, and he also gets the shevach. V'yafa b'delo pirish, even though that wasn't explained explicitly. V'les lan de Shmuel. That means to say we don't hold like Shmuel. The Amar shevach tzarich limalich, that says with regards to the shevach, you have to consult with him. You have to make sure, determine ahead of time that he's going to get back the improvements. No, that's not the halacha. The halacha is that he gets back the shevach, even though that wasn't made explicit. And also hikir ba she'ena shalo. Let's say he recognized all along, the buyer knew all along wrong that it was not the seller's, v'loch, and he bought it anyway. So the halach in that case is, Mos Yeshlo, he still gets his money back, the money he does get back. However, Shevach Einlo, he does not get the money back for any improvements that he made to the property. And finally, the Gemara says, Achrayus to soferu, Achrayus is considered to be a scribal error, meaning we automatically assume that the person takes upon himself Achrayus, bein b'shtari halva, that's true by shtari halva, meaning again, if you have a loan document, the borrower takes upon himself Achrayus, there is going to be considered a shibud, even if that's not written into the shtar. Bein b'shtari mekachu memkar, and that's true by documents of sale as well. It's automatically assumed that the seller takes upon himself Achrayus, and Rashi explains, V'achrayus to sofru, Achrayus is to sofer, v'les lan de Shmuel, we don't hold like Shmuel, D'amar shibud tzarech limolech, that again, when it comes to shibud, the sofer has to consult the seller, let's say he doesn't have to consult, we automatically assume that the seller is taking Achrayus. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Shmuel may Rav. Shmuel asked Rav the following question, Chazar v'locha mi bailam harishonim. Let's say the gazlan goes ahead and ends up buying it from the original owner, meaning to say you have a gazlan, he steals a field, he sells the field to the lokeach, he sells the field to the buyer, but then he goes ahead, the seller himself goes ahead and actually buys it from the person that he stole it from. So what's the halacha in that case? And Rashi explains, Chazar gazlan v'locha mi bailam harishonim. The thief goes ahead and buys it from the original owner la'achar shemachar lelokeach, after he sold it to the lokeach. At the time he sold it to the lokeach, it wasn't really his, but now it is his. So ma'olios b'makom bailam, can he now take the place of the bailam ki'ilu locha achar, as if somebody else had bought it from the original bailam, v'yotzia miyad halokeach, and can he now take it away from the lokeach, from the person who bought it from him? That was the question that Shmuel asked Rav. So Amar Le, so he said to him, meaning Rav said back to Shmuel, Ma'machar lo rishon l'sheni, what is the first person really selling to the second person? Kol zechus shetav liyado, any merit that he receives. Meaning to say, when he essentially sold it to the lokeach, he gives the lokeach all the zechuyos, and therefore he's not able to take it away from the lokeach. And Rashi explains, Amar Le lo matzi lafuka. He said to him, he's not able to take it away from the lokeach. Shekashem machar, because when he sold it, machar lo kol zechus shetav liyado. What he's really selling is any kind of ownership that even he eventually gets over this property. When he's buying it from the original owner, what he's really doing is buying it in order to uphold the sale that he made to the lokeach, and therefore the lokeach is allowed to keep the property. And the Gemara says, my time, what's the reason? Meaning, why would he do this? Why would he go ahead and buy the property from the person who was the original owner? When he had sold this property, he had first stolen the property and then sold it. Now he's buying it after the fact. What's going on over here? And the Gemara says, Mar Zutra says, Nichole de lo nikra la gazlona. He's doing it because he doesn't want to be called a gazlan. He doesn't want to be called a thief. And therefore, he'd rather just buy it now and let the sale go through. Rashi says, de lo likri gazlona shlo yicharfena lokech zeh. He doesn't want this buyer to shame him. Kashiyotziana nigzal miyada, when the nigzal takes it away from him. V'yikrenu gazlan, and they'll call him a gazlan. L'kach chozer l'hamin memkaro. Therefore, he's going ahead and purchasing it now from the person he stole it from in order to uphold the sale. He doesn't want the buyer to call him a thief. That's the opinion of Mar Zutra. Ravashi says, Nichole deleku behemnuse. The reason why he's buying it now is because he wants to be considered a reliable person. Now, it seems to be very similar to the first explanation. Ravashi's explanation here seems to be very similar to Mar Zutra's explanation. So the Gemara says, Mai beinai. Well, what's the difference between those two explanations? One is he doesn't want to be called a thief. The other one is he wants to be considered reliable. And the Gemara says, Ika beinai, the difference is the mis lokeach. Let's say the lokeach, the buyer actually died. So according to, in such a situation, Man Damar, according to the one who says, Nichole de lo likri a gazlan, he doesn't want to be called a gazlan, so now he's not going to be called a gazlan because the buyer already died. Rashi explains, the mislokeach, the buyer died, la'achar shalocha gazlan min habaylim, meaning after the gazlan actually bought it from the original owner, v'hagazlan bo lahotzia mibonav, now the gazlan is trying to take it away from the children of the buyer. And Rashi continues, Laman damar lo chazer lahamin memkaro ela de lo likri lokeach gazlan, according to the one who says that the only reason he's trying to uphold the sale is so the lokeach doesn't call him a gazlan. So in this case, the lokeach already has died, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph.